Hi, John. Super happy to welcome you on Sustainability Explored. Today we have another unusual topic to discuss sustainability within a certain industry, and this industry today is flowers. So we will talk with John about how sustainably, how flowers are grown and sold in a sustainable way in the US. John is the founder of a company called the Bouqs. He is the first guest of this scale on this podcast. I'm nervous even a little bit today. So what I know is 74 and more million in venture capital funding. You will correct me if I'm wrong. More than 1 billion in total revenue and appearance on Shark Tank, among other high-profile TV shows. So John, flowers and the business of flowers. Walk me through your journey in this business. How did you come up with the idea? What happened? It's not an easy business, I imagine, to manage. The lifespan of flowers is quite short. So how did you choose this topic and this field?
Sure, and thanks so much for having me on. It's a real honor to talk about sustainability, and thanks for having the podcast. It's great to have folks raising awareness around sustainable practices and how to make the world a better place. Bouqs started sort of through a conversation with my good buddy JP. JP is born and raised in Ecuador, and we became good friends in undergraduates at the University of Notre Dame. And he always had his mind set on working in the floral industry. His family ran a dairy farm, and his uncle ran a floral farm, and just through exposure and time with the product, he absolutely fell in love with it, with the land, with the people, with the product. And so even as teenagers, he talked about working in floral. And, time passed, and he was a biochemist and a researcher, and then eventually went back to Ecuador and was running as general manager of a floral farm. And, he and I started talking initially because his frustration primarily was from the farmer side with the industry. And their farm in particular invested very heavily in their people and in their environmental practices. So they recycled 100% of their water. They didn't use any red label chemicals. They used natural predators to stop the bugs. They didn't cut down the rainforest. So a whole host of things that really helped the environment, and they treated their labor great. The average farm sees, which is, by the way, the labor is 75% female. The average farm will see, a given farmhand last like 2.5 to 3 years on a given farm. For their farm, they would stick around for 20 years because they treated them so much better than anywhere else. They had living wages, and they had English as a second language, they had childcare, they had healthcare, all these great benefits. And what was frustrating for my co-founder was they were doing all this great work, but there was no way for the end consumer to even know that their roses that they grew were being grown in a way that was different than any other roses they saw in a given florist shop or on a grocery shelf, whatever it might be. So for him, that's where it started, and he reached a way to ship directly to customers. His customers at the time were florists. And he wanted to talk to me because I'm a branding guy. My career is Bain & Company and then Disney and the corporate strategy group, and really working on how does sort of consumer behavior, technology, and product all sort of work together. And he started asking me questions about how to do sales and marketing around it. And at the time, I was at another startup, and I got really intrigued by this story around all these layers that exist between the farmer and the customer. There's 4 or 5 layers between that sort of obfuscate where the flowers come from. And at the same time, I looked at the industry and saw an industry without a brand leader. There wasn't a Starbucks or a Harley Davidson or a BMW or whatever brands you want to choose to sort of represent aspirational branding. And I thought, if the farmers in this category are not happy with the way this works, and the consumers are not happy with the way this works, what's happening in between that is an opportunity to build a better answer, a better mousetrap for the customer? And that's sort of how we started on the journey.
I was joking with my friends recently that I spent, as a non-native English speaker, I spent half an hour at least before the interview practicing my spelling. The name of the company, the Bouqs, how often do people confuse it with books?
Yeah, it was actually an early conversation that we had, and if you remember from Shark Tank, you said you watched our episode.
Yeah.
Barbara disliked the name greatly, and early on we had this concept of it was going to be 30bouqs.com, 30 Bouqs, and it was a play on word with bucks, and we were going to do 30 bouquets at $30, and that was going to be our shtick, our hook. We ended up not doing that because we couldn't make any money charging $30. So then we went to 40 Bouqs. But then we started thinking, well, that would really lock us in long term to a $40 price point, and we maybe want to offer different sizes, which now we offer lots of different sizes and things. So we moved away from the number part, but we really liked Bouqs because it's bouquet but simplified. And our entire business is bouquets simplified. And so we liked that aspect of it. There were some questions and some debate around, well, people understand it. When we asked people to spell it, someone would put a G in there instead of a Q. Bouqs, like bougainvillea, right?
Right.
And there was some back and forth on it. And ultimately we decided to stick with it because there's sort of two general theories on how you name a business or how you name a product. One is it's explanatory, right? If we were flowers.com or cheapflowers.com or sustainableflowers.com, that would describe the business. People would know right away what it is. And that generally is a good way of naming utilitarian brands, right? Things that stand for utility. The other way is to name things in a way that makes people lean in and say, wait, I want to learn more about that. That's curious or interesting, right? Uber has nothing to do with ride sharing or cars or transportation. It's just the word Uber.
Right.
And the first time you heard about Uber, you said, well, tell me about that for a second, right? So we leaned more in that direction. The other part was we were inventing the word so we could trademark it, which meant no one else could use it, and we could essentially play in our own space. And so those were all the reasons why we ended up with Bouqs. Every once in a while, people will still misspell it with a G, but we own Bouqs.com as well. So if somebody does type it in wrong, they still end up at Bouqs.com. And some, if it's in conversation, some people will say, do you mean books.com? What do you mean? But that's the lean in. That's where all of a sudden a conversation happens. And if you just tell somebody a name and that's all you communicate, they'll forget about it. If you say Bouqs.com and they say books.com, and then you explain why it's Bouqs.com, it sticks with them longer. And so that's why we ended up with Bouqs. And despite Barbara not loving it, Barbara became a very great customer of ours right after the show and continues to be to this day. And so far, the name's worked out pretty well for us.
That's so cool and so smart. The jury on Shark Tank also mentioned they were unhappy about delivery time, 6 days. 6 days delivery. Did it change over time?
Yeah, so when we recorded Shark Tank, this was pretty early. This was late summer of 2013, so we weren't even 1 year old when we recorded. It aired in spring of 2014, so we were a year and a half. At that point, we actually had next day delivery through our American farms, which we still work with and is still a large part of our business. We've also been able to shorten the lead time from South America. It's more 4 to 5 days now instead of 6. And then our next day flowers you can order later in the day. You can order as late as 6 p.m. Eastern and still get them the next day, depending on the flowers. And so we've shortened the window. We actually even have we launched it at the end of last year, an experiment in the Los Angeles market where we can get same day delivery done of still certified sustainable flowers. And so that's still new for us, but our hope is to roll that out, across the country over time. So we're definitely faster than we were at the time. Mr. Wonderful said at the end that he would send flowers to my grave, but he wasn't sure if they would arrive on time. But because of our next day service, we do a good amount of business on last minute orders.
Yeah. Well, that phrase, that what made me think they are so mean, bringing up the grave and so on. Anyway, back to the juice, the subject. What did you do finally with those middlemen, the 4 or 5 layers in between the farmer and the consumer? And can you walk me through the whole production cycle? Where the flowers are grown, what do you use in terms of pesticides, insecticides? What keeps the flowers fresh?
Mm-hmm, sure. So, the traditional supply chain is, generally speaking, an imported flower goes into Miami. It goes through customs. It goes to wholesalers and largely an auction-based system, where in Miami they'll auction it off, sort of pulled from Europe, the traditional flower market model, which then will sell to wholesalers who move them around the country in bulk, who will then sell to a local florist. And florists increasingly depend on an internet website, sort of an order gathering website to send them orders. And so all those different layers exist between the customer and the farmer. And that is a pretty inefficient way of moving the flowers around. 90% of the flowers sold in the US are grown outside of the United States. Still about 9% are grown in California and 1% elsewhere. So most of the production is coming internationally, which means they have to travel a long distance. So the way that our model works is we work directly with those farmers, whether they're in the United States or in South America. Primarily Ecuador and Colombia are the two largest exporters of floral to the US. And we work directly with them to ensure the freshest and highest quality possible. And then we also only work with farms that are certified third-party sustainable. So Rainforest Alliance and Vera Flora are the two main certifiers in the industry that will make sure that certain practices are in place, like recycling of water, like not using red label chemicals, et cetera, et cetera. And that's the primary mechanism that we rely on. So it's really a third-party based system. There are some farms that we will work with that can't afford the certifications, but then we will go in and work with those folks to ensure that they're as good as or better than the certification. And we've actually helped a large number of farms get certified over the years by showing them the benefit of getting that certification. And so the real key thesis behind the business that helps sustainability is really about transparency. Until you know where the flower comes from, there's no way to hold anyone accountable for more sustainable practices. And then as you have multiple layers, by definition, you end up with a lot more waste. The industry wastes somewhere between a third and half of the flowers in that traditional supply chain. And the question is sort of why? Why would you waste so much? Well, it is a dainty, perishable item, so it will die over time no matter what. The longer it takes to get to its endpoint, the more chances there are for it to die. The more times it's handled, just literally someone picking it up, that means more chances for it to be damaged, for it to be bruised, for a stem to be broken, for petals to be knocked off, which leads to waste. So all of these different steps along the way, all the time that passes and all the handling leads to an inordinate amount of waste. Flowers that die at the farm are actually reused as fertilizer. So there actually isn't waste if it dies at the farm. Flowers that die in a consumer's home have been used by the consumer for its intended purpose, which is bringing nature into the home, bringing beauty into the home, recognizing an important date. So there isn't waste on those two ends. But in between, everything is literally avoidable waste. And so our entire plan is to use technology and data to know where the flowers are coming from, when they're leaving that endpoint, and so we can ensure back to the end stakeholder, whether that is an individual consumer or we work with brides for weddings. We hope to work with wedding planners, florists, et cetera, over time, that they can know then where it comes from and they can hold the supply chain accountable to delivering a sustainable bloom.
Right. Do you check your supply chain? Is there at all a way to check it?
Yeah, so there's two things that we do sort of primarily. One is we rely on the third-party certifications, and they do on-site checks, annual renewals, those types of things, and as part of their processes for getting a Rainforest Alliance or a Vera Flora certification. And then we also, not currently in a COVID world, but generally we also physically visit the farms. And so we have a team in Ecuador, we have a team in Colombia, and a team in the US who will go out and physically visit and inspect the farms. And the sort of, call it master chief on our team of that is my co-founder, Juan Pablo, who again grew up in this industry, was a general manager of a large rose farm, and is a biochemist by training. And so he is extremely well educated, has a graduate degree, very smart guy, and very passionate about sustainable farming and eco-friendly farming in general. And so we use sort of both of those levers to make sure that our farms are abiding by the standards that we set.
Cool. I assume it's very important. I mean, at least I'm judging by myself and my own behavior. I need to know where my clothes was made, where my food was grown. So the Generation Z, millennials, they do care. Usually, when we see the product was grown sustainably, ethically, it means it's a little bit more expensive, or sometimes even considerably more expensive. Is it the case with the Bouqs?
So we are, I would say, at par with the industry and maybe a slight premium, depending. You can see players that sell sustainably grown product that are significantly more expensive than Bouqs. You will get a great value with us. Again, maybe at a slight premium, but it's not really a price point difference that you would notice. The time of year where things do get more expensive is at like a Valentine's Day or an upcoming Mother's Day, because the demand in the industry is higher, so prices across the board go up. But generally speaking, with Bouqs, you'll pay the same and often less for a more premium arrangement and a more premium design, especially on our subscription product. So we have a subscription where you can get a dozen roses or the equivalent. So we have mixed bouquets and other flower types, but if you use a dozen roses as sort of your unit, for $36 delivered, and that's with free delivery. And in online floral, you can't find that pricing really anywhere else. And the program has the ability to skip a month or pause or change your recipient from your mom to your sister or maybe to yourself. And so there's a lot of flexibility inherent in it. And so it's a really great way to send flowers at a really great price. And so, if you look out there, you'll see a dozen roses out the door for some of our competitors for $50 to $60, maybe $65. And so to be able to deliver sustainably grown at 36 flat, we feel like is a really great value.
I wanted to ask you about this subscription program, subscription service. Actually, I only started to appreciate the flowers when the lockdown started. The flowers you can see, it's the fourth bouquet from the subscription from here, from Ukraine, that I bought for myself. I mean, adulting very fast here, buying flowers for myself for no reason. But, even if it's not an essential product, I mean, it's not food, it's not something extremely necessary, I still find it necessary to keep my mental health, to keep sane, I wanted to ask you, with the start of pandemic, definitely, I mean, it's not a good event for anyone. Did you see any change in sales? Do you think people started to make their house cozier? Because that was, I think, in part my reason. I just looked around at my natural habitat and realized that I'm not happy here. So I started to make it cozy. And started
I think what you're experiencing, a lot of people are experiencing. And so whether it's sending something because travel is difficult, and so sending a gift is a great way to be there without being there, or, and I've heard it anecdotally, we've seen it from customers, writing into the company or on social media, that the flowers bring nature inside, and it brings a sense of calm and a sense of beauty at a time where there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of fear. And so I think what you're experiencing is very common, and we've seen that certainly in our business, during this time. And I think it's right. There's clinical studies done to show that bringing plants and floral into the home can boost serotonin levels in the brain. It can physically, chemically happier if they have flowers in the house. And so I think as people are staying home a lot more and unable to enjoy nature as much outside, it's a great way to bring it into the home and really boost that level of happiness.
Yeah, that's totally true. Tell me about packaging. I know when my guys came the first time, I noticed they didn't use any. So they used natural leaves, like bigger leaves than the leaves of the flowers, to wrap the bouquet around. And, I put a mental note to myself, like, well done, good job. How about your packaging?
Yeah, so our packaging is 100% recycled and 100% recyclable corrugate cardboard. So we don't have no packaging because our product is traveling, quite a distance from a farm to a customer. So it needs sort of the protection and the presentation that our customers expect. But we use the most sustainable method possible, which is, again, 100% recycled and 100% recyclable. There are certain parts of our packaging very small, like a small, I would call it, half-inch wide and probably 5 inches long strip, again, of recyclable plastic that we need to secure the product inside the packaging so it's not bouncing around, because flowers that bounce around during transit will get bruised and will break. But other than that, everything is 100% recycled and 100% recyclable. And so we really focus heavily on ensuring the most minimal footprint as possible and the most sustainable practices possible. But because of just the nature of the business and delivering the flowers, we have to make sure that they're nice and protected.
Yeah, cool. Do you do something differently after the pandemic, after the lockdown started? Maybe you started to invest more in your own corporate social responsibility programs. I, by the way, noticed on LinkedIn, I did a good chunk of research. I noticed you are sending flowers to the medical staff, and anyone kind of can. In Italy, it's called hanging. The concept was about hanging espressos, so you can buy for someone else and kind of hang. Tell me more about this initiative.
Yeah, we're very lucky in the sense that our business can operate pretty well 100% remote. Everyone's been working from home for weeks, and because of the nature of our business, we haven't had the disruption that a grocery store would have or a restaurant, right? And so in a time where a lot of people are struggling, and especially the medical field, healthcare workers, frontline nurses, doctors, et cetera, we just wanted to find a way to try to do our part to help. And so we launched an initiative called 1,000 Thank Yous, where we asked folks in the community through social media to nominate the friends and family of theirs that are on the front line. And we had people nominated that are doctors and nurses, folks that are administrators at hospitals. We had folks that care for, they're pediatricians or that care for folks in nursing homes. A lot of very inspiring stories shared out there. And it was just a way for us to help support those folks and show them that we appreciate what they're doing. I wish we could give 1 million thank yous. But it was a small way for us to give back to the community and try to help those folks that are on the front line recognize that there are people out there that don't know them personally, and that the nominators do know them personally, that really care about what they're doing and thank them for helping all the rest of us by caring for those that have been impacted by this disease.
Awesome. I really feel like it's the time of strengthening the community. We start caring about people who we don't know, as you say, in person. We don't see them physically, and yet we feel compelled, we feel determined to appreciate them, to send them signs of appreciation, and to show them that we are strong as a community.
Right.
Another thing I wanted to ask you, you mentioned you have technological means to check the flowers delivery, like from the farmers along the way. How does it happen, and how did you integrate technology in the whole business process?
Sure. Yeah, our technology is really designed primarily to achieve that goal. So it starts with being directly integrated with the farm. So our technology is actually at the farm level. So if you travel out to a farm in the middle of nowhere in Ecuador or Colombia, you will see that they have internet access to our platform. And that platform is the core communication point between our business and the farmer. And what that does for us is it helps us understand what they have that's growing at any given time, what they have available for us, what the status is of any given shipment. Has it been cut? Is it packed? Has it been shipped out? And then with our international and domestic carriers, we get continuous updates about where that package is versus where it should be on its way to the customer. And again, that entire mechanism is really the core piece to making sustainability work. Anyone that buys in bulk and brings it in that isn't buying directly from the farm introduces uncertainty about where the product comes from. And so our ability to go directly to that farmer is really the key part, and the technology is the enabler of that process and that platform to work.
Cool. Another thing, I always ask the guests of my podcasts which challenges they see in terms of their business operations, and especially the sustainable angle of it. That's number one. And second part of the question is, how do you expect the industry to change after this massive global transformation?
That's a great question. So we certainly we certainly make it harder on ourselves by focusing on sustainability. It would be cheaper, quicker, faster, and more profitable to not care. And so
But it will not work in the long term.
Well, and it would have negative impact to the world that we don't want to have. A big reason we started the company was to create the conversation in floral that has already happened in food, right? Organic everything is available in your local grocery store. 10 years ago, organic anything was only available in very small sort of co-op type stores. That conversation has happened. In floral, it's beginning to happen. And we like to think that we're a part of that, but more and more farmers are finding that investing in sustainability is actually better for their business and for their people and for the environment. And our business was sort of predicated on that idea that we wanted to spark that conversation and make that happen. But we certainly pay more. We pay more in direct costs for the flowers themselves. We pay more for transportation. We pay more in order to certify and guarantee that to our customers so that those that care have a place to go and they can vote with their dollars saying, I also care about this cause. We do that because we believe that the audience, like you said yourself, increasingly cares about this as a way that they want to shop. And also, again, to catalyze this conversation in the industry to make it better for everyone. In terms of how we think about this changing, sort of post-COVID, unfortunately, there's been a lot of pain in the floral industry because of primarily canceled events. If you think about hotels shutting down, all those lobbies with beautiful flowers typically, they're not operating, so they're not buying flowers. Weddings are canceled or postponed. That means that the wedding flowers aren't being sold. And so there's been a lot of negative impact to the floral industry in this space. We've actually seen very little impact to our business, again, because of the way that we're set up to operate and because of the way that we play. So, I think flowers will always be a part of people's lives. I think we're in a period now for, call it 6 to 12 months. We're going to see less use of things like events and weddings, et cetera, as social distancing measures continue. But I think that will come back to normal over time. My hope is that in this time where people are at home and there's an opportunity to reflect, that people can think more about how they want to consume and what they want to consume and really what's important, right? As you said, what's actually essential in my life. And I believe that there will be sort of a mindset shift in the consumer mindset and how they think about what's important in their lives, what matters, and what types of products they want to buy. It's been happening, but these types of global massive events tend to lead to shifts in the way that people just think about the world. And I expect that to happen. I think that will primarily be the biggest impact of this for floral. I think that it will come back as an overall industry as strong as ever, but potentially even stronger because of some reprioritization of what people really care about.
Right. I speak a lot with the experts in the field of circular economy, from different industries, those policymakers, guidelines writers for the governments, and everybody seemed to come up with the combined altogether vision that things will not go as they did previously. Not because, in part because, there is this mental change and transformation and reflections, and people are staying home for how long? 2 months already and counting. But another point is that there is just no resource to continue depleting human resources, natural resources, and going business as usual. Do you think your competitors will take the lead and also look into integrating sustainable practices in their business?
I would love it if they would. I don't think that the industry in general is set up for it at this point. And so, again, if you think about all those layers of processing between the farmer and the consumer, there just aren't mechanisms right now to have the level of transparency that we have. So my hope is that the industry will invest in it. And again, farmers are moving more and more in that direction. And a larger and larger portion of farmers are investing in sustainability, which is great because that means a larger and larger portion of floral sold is. But having the transparency in the supply chain is a big investment. We've raised, as you mentioned earlier, over $70 million in venture capital to build the technology to enable it. So it takes real dollars and real investment. It's not something that people can just say, I want to do this now, and then it happens. And so my hope is that not just in floral, but globally, companies invest more and more in finding more sustainable, less environmentally impactful ways of sourcing, distributing, and selling their product. And so my hope is that it moves in that direction. I think just the way that the industry is set up, it's going to be a real challenge. I think it's certainly possible if folks really focus on it and make it a priority over profit in many cases. And my hope is that it continues to move in that direction.
I can't help but notice that you use a lot the word investment. I think part of the problem is that businesses tend to see sustainability as an expense. And when you hear expense, you think, I'm losing my resources. But when you just switch this word into investment, you feel the growth. You immediately feel like this super different connotation of the whole thing.
And that really comes down to leadership, right? If it's important to the leadership of a company, of a brand, then it's going to be viewed as an investment. It's going to be viewed as an investment in the future of our planet, in our customers, in our partners, in the labor that picks the flowers or whatever your product is. And so, at the end of the day, we will all win and we will all lose together. If the environment gets to a place where you just can't fly a plane because the winds are so disruptive to flight, or if the ocean gets so acidic that you simply can't fish, it doesn't matter what you do at that point. You don't have an industry. And so it's a short-term versus a long-term horizon mindset, and it's a leadership mindset about what kind of stewardship do we want to give to the planet? What kind of stewardship do we want to give to the people that support our businesses? And that is fundamentally a leadership question. And whether you consider it an expense or a bother or something that slows you down, or you think about it as a growth opportunity and you're investing in the future of not just your business, but in us as a people and our planet, that completely will drive what you care about and how you act. And look, there's no perfect answers, right? We as a business have impact on the world that is not all positive, as all businesses do. But the question is, what are you aiming for, and where are you trying to make it better? And if the answer is it's always a nuisance and it's always a bother and it's making our business worse or less profitable, it'll never be a priority. And so it really is a mindset shift that again has started to happen in our category, but certainly has a ways to go.
Totally share your view. So leadership, long-term vision, strategy, and care, I would add to that list. One last question probably for today. I really appreciate your time, and I could talk to you hours and hours. One piece of advice you could give to the listeners of Sustainability Explored.
So one piece of advice just for life, for anything, or related to sustainability, or what?
Sustainability, flower maybe related.
Sure. So, I would say two things, and these are, they're related to our industry, so I'll focus on floral. I think one is, as we've already talked about, is just ask where your stuff comes from, right? Whether you're buying a shirt or pants or a car or whatever, do your research, because that's the way that the world changes, is by consumers voting with their dollars. And if brand A has complete transparency about where it comes from and how it minimizes impact, and brand B doesn't, and this one's 10 cents more, buy this one. Invest in brands that protect our environment and that give back and that make the world a better place. Because the more and more that happens on the margin, the more and more businesses then have to focus on it, right? And so I think that's the first thing, is ask the questions and then vote with your dollars. When it comes to flowers, order early. Ordering early is better for everyone, no matter who you're buying from. It's better for Bouqs if you're buying from us. It's better for a local florist if you're buying from them. Wherever it is, just order early, because that means that you're getting the best stuff at the best price, and your partner, whomever it is, has the best chance to give you the best quality experience. If you're ordering very last minute, it's hard on everyone, and most likely you're going to pay too much and you're going to get not the best experience. So in our category, it's all about planning ahead.
Super. Thanks so much for sharing a lot of this wonderful information. I personally learned a lot about flowers industry today, and super happy to have you here today as my guest. And I wish you all the best with the flower industry and integrating sustainability approaches into it. I'm very happy it's happening somewhere in the world.
Thanks so much for having me. It was great to meet you. Be
Super.
safe.
Ciao, ciao. You too.